29 News at 6.
A Charlottesville woman talks about the growing crime rate in her neighborhood.
Seatbelts are causing some problems at the state capitol.
And after more than 50 years, a landmark family business is sold. The news starts now.
This is Dateline 29 News at 6.
Good evening, I'm Dave Cupp.
And I'm Stacy Horst. Charlottesville police are still searching for a suspect in the city's first murder of the year.
Now, that shooting happened last Saturday night in the Blue Ridge Commons complex, a place that has seen more than its share of crime lately. Now, over the past 6 months, that neighborhood has been the site of 3 shootings. Kristen Jackson spoke to one resident who is waiting for this violence to end.
Mrs. Rogers made the Blue Ridge Commons complex her home almost 30 years ago.
It was like children playing, you're greeting one another. Everybody was pleasant.
She says back then the neighborhood was a place of pride.
Everybody seemingly was happy to have a place where they could live in peace.
But over the years, violence has shattered that peace in the neighborhood. Drugs, gang members, murder. Mrs. Rogers has heard it all. She heard the shots that killed Winston Keith Morris just last Saturday. She also heard the shots that killed James Monroe last summer.
Oh, yes, I heard that. I heard 3 shots that night because it was right across the street. And that really bothered me. I made it because it was closer to me. Because I can't really describe why. It's just something about taking somebody's life over nothing.
Mrs. Rogers says she knows a source of the trouble.
Outsiders are coming in peddling drugs. That's one of the hardest things that we are having.
Charlottesville police say they are trying to work with people like Mrs. Rogers to clean up these streets.
We do have a high number of patrols that go through those sectors, but we increased that. And we also beefed up our Street Hawks division and our Jade division for sting operations.
But Mrs. Rogers' hopes are for something more simple, a return to the way things used to be.
You were neighbors, and that meant you cared about one another. They didn't go around and yelling, shouting. The only thing about it, they respected we respected one another.
In Charlottesville, Kristen Jackson, Dateline 29 News.
New information tonight about a Rockingham County man suspected of killing his wife. UVA hospital officials now say 79-year-old James Grinstead has been transferred to another unit of the hospital. Earlier, hospital employees reported that he had been released. Police say Grinstead enters his wife's room at a Harrisonburg nursing home last week and fatally shot her before turning the gun on himself. Grinstead was airlifted to the University of Virginia Medical Center. Harrisonburg police have not yet charged him in connection with the shooting. The Charlottesville Police Department will be teaching rapid response tactics to most of its officers this month. They're training specifically to deal with situations like school shootings.
Where you're waiting for a SWAT team to assemble and arrive. So this method of training is designed to teach any police officer or deputy sheriffs that go through this training to arrive, set up a contact team and a rescue team, and immediately go inside the building.
Most of the Charlottesville instructors learned the techniques after training with officers who responded to the Columbine shootings. Tomorrow night at 11, we'll take you to the training session.
A landmark business that has also served as a tourist attraction in Orange County has been sold. As Kay Young reports, Mormont Orchards has a new owner.
For more than half of a century, the Moore family has owned property atop Clark's Mountain in Orange County. Gray Moore started a peach orchard in 1946. In the 70s, it was expanded by son Goodwin into a multi-fruit pick-your-own orchard, then passed on again to daughter Mary and her husband. But weather conditions in the 90s were damaging to the family business.
We have not had the best weather conditions in each of the 4 years that we have run it. In 1996, the remnants of Hurricane Fran came through in early September and wiped out our entire crop of McIntosh apples and 2 peaches. In 1997, we suffered a late winter freeze in April that killed all of our peaches. We had no peaches in 1997, and that's our main money-making crop.
You put it in there. There you go.
In 98, we had drought conditions, which affected the size of the peaches and therefore production. And the same thing again last year in 99. We had some drought conditions. So we were not able to make much of a dent in the debt that was owed on this place when we took over its operation in 1996, and therefore we were forced to sell it.
While the future of these 430 acres is still not known, the new owner of the property made the purchase for personal as well as business reasons.
The purchaser is a man named John Sheldon Clark, and Mr. Clark used to live full-time in Orange, and now he lives primarily in Florida but still has a home here in Orange. He is not a developer. He is interested in preserving, whether you want to call it Mormont or Clark's Mountain.
Clark already owned land adjacent to Mormont, and the purchase brings his land holdings in Orange County to more than 1,500 acres. Clark is still exploring what will be done with the land, but the possibility of it remaining an orchard diminishes as the growing season moves closer each day. In Orange County, Kay Young, Dateline 29 News.
Governor Jim Gilmore is reviewing proposals that would revolutionize the way Virginia's colleges and universities are funded. Under a plan backed by the governor's Blue Ribbon Higher Education Committee, individual schools would receive a 6-year funding commitment from lawmakers in return for meeting agreed-upon standards. The governor says that would enhance accountability.
Strategic planning, financial planning, and the ability to make sure that the public knows that when they invest these billions and billions of dollars in higher education, that in fact that it's being used effectively for the best possible quality for their sons and daughters.
The new arrangements, called institutional performance agreements, would be established between individual schools, the General Assembly, and the executive branch.
A measure allowing police to pull you over for not wearing your seatbelt is winding its way through the General Assembly. Jeff Krause reports.
It's common knowledge that wearing a seatbelt gives you a much better chance of surviving a car crash. But currently, state law makes not wearing a belt a secondary offense, meaning police can't stop you for it.
A lot of people think, well, if I don't break any of the rules or regulations on the road, then I won't be stopped and they won't stop me for my seatbelt. Now, being that if it is ever approved to be a primary law, then they would think twice about it and maybe just say, well, I don't want to pay the fine. I don't want to get in trouble on wearing a seatbelt.
That reasoning is shared by Delegate Gerald Jones. The Norfolk Democrat is sponsoring legislation to make not wearing a seatbelt a primary offense. Legislation that's won the approval of the House Transportation Committee. Supporters say it will save lives.
It is going to save people's lives. It's going to save kids as well. And what happens is when you do pass a primary law, seatbelt use increases because the threat of getting a ticket now is very real, and that's what gets people to buckle up.
And those who doubt that can talk to Robert Gurley, the lone survivor of a fatal summer car wreck who testified to the committee.
My vehicle, I was a front seat passenger, was struck by an oncoming vehicle by a drunk driver, resulting in his own death and the death of my other two friends. I was wearing my seatbelt, and the seatbelt is what caused me to keep from coming through the windshield, which is what actually saved my life, that and God.
At the state capitol, I'm Jeff Krause, Dateline 29 News.
When the winter weather hits, Albemarle residents and businesses don't legally have to shovel their sidewalks. Unlike the city of Charlottesville and Albemarle doesn't have an ordinance that says residents must shovel their private sidewalks. Now that's because under the Virginia Code, counties can't make such a law, but some sidewalks manage to stay clean anyway.
Most of the sidewalks in the county are maintained by VDOT. Those particularly up to 29 North Kick Corridor are maintained by VDOT. There are some sidewalks or some asphalt paths in neighborhoods that the county has agreements with the neighborhood to maintain those areas.
Only the General Assembly can give Albemarle permission to start up a snow removal ordinance. Now, some of that snow that's been piling up melted away today.
Yeah, Robert's in the Weather Center. He's going to tell us about these warmer temperatures and whether they might stick around to the weekend. Bert?
Well, remember now, it's all relative. It's only the 3rd or 4th of February coming up. So our 40-degree weather today looks like it'll be cooling off for the weekend ahead. But the snowmelt continues slowly. We'll have the forecast for you in just a second. Welcome back. It was not a bad day today. This is how we're shaping up right now. In Charlottesville, 42 degrees, 44% humidity, southwest winds, and the barometer is at 29.74. Our daytime high today, all the way up to 45 degrees, right about where we should be for this time of year. Our low was 26, and the average would be 24. Records on this date in history, 77 in 1989 was the record high, 1 degree back in '02. I wonder if we'll be calling it ought to in another couple of years. Anyway, 42 in the valley, 42% humidity, southwest winds, and 29.70 on the barometer. Let's take a look at what's going on across the country. We have what we call clipper, an Alberta clipper, that is low-pressure systems that come generally out of the Canadian provinces here on a northwest trek across Virginia. These systems generally don't bring us a whole lot of snow, but they do produce some snow to the north of us and to the west of us. Our geography takes a big front seat in situations like this by blocking off a lot of the snow shower activity. So what we're going to see tonight is the continued progress of this low as it works its way across to the north of us, dragging a cold front with it. It'll scare up a few snow showers in western sections of Virginia, but generally speaking, this is not a pattern that brings a lot of snow to central Virginia or even into the Shenandoah Valley in a lot of cases. So all we do is sort of give you the location of the system and the possibility that we may scare up a snow shower, especially, of course, with this time of year when it's nice and cold. And you can see some activity being reported on our movie here showing where the cloud cover is. As we put this into the winter mode, you can see a little clearer where the snow is falling. And basically from Pennsylvania back to West Virginia, but the line of it is sort of decreasing. I don't see a whole lot of activity in here. Maybe a few snow flurries off toward Culpeper tonight, and maybe Page County, Rockingham, a few snow flurries. But in Augusta, Albemarle, and to the point south, there are going to be very widely scattered snow showers tonight, and I doubt if a lot of you will even see anything. So kind of a quiet night thanks to the Blue Ridge Mountains blocking off yet another system approaching from the west. What's going to happen tomorrow? Well, the main activity stays to the north, but we will continue to see this northwest flow across the mid-Atlantic, and therefore another slight possibility of a snow shower or two. The bigger story, I think, though, is that earlier this week we were talking about the possibility of temperatures in the 50s for the weekend. As I told you a couple days ago, we took that back. That's not going to happen. In fact, it's going to be downright chilly over the weekend as this system works its way through with a reinforcing shot of some chilly air. Our temperatures on Saturday and Sunday are only going to struggle to get to about 40. So once again, for tonight, temperatures in the 20s, some snow showers and snow flurries are possible tonight. I doubt if there will be any significant accumulation, although some areas may see a quick dusting of snow tonight, particularly in the Shenandoah Valley, Churchville, points west. You folks may see a little bit of the white stuff by tomorrow morning. And for central Virginia tomorrow, snow flurries are still possible, variably cloudy skies. The high temperature, though, not too bad, around 38 degrees, so we're going to continue to nudge above the freezing mark on our daytime highs. Valley weather, same thing, just above freezing, a few degrees here and there. Mostly cloudy skies with a scattered snow flurry possible. Breezy, northwest winds around 10 to 15 miles per hour. Now, your 5-day forecast shows you that the weekend ahead, for the first weekend in February, will feel very February-like, with daytime highs only about upper 30s to lower 40s, and overnight lows in the teens and low 20s. So
Okay.
that's a far cry from 55 degrees.
Oh, it sure is.
Yeah, it is.
But, you know, that's forecasts change very dramatically in the wintertime, so forget what you heard on Monday.
And despite the warmth today, a few school systems still are doing delayed openings and so forth. Nelson County schools are going to be closed tomorrow. And Cumberland County schools are going to be opening a couple of hours late.
And I think that's it.
That's all we have right now. Be nice to see all those disappear for a change, wouldn't it? Well, the University of Virginia has jumped into a top 10 list.
But it's not a list that immediately comes to mind. We'll take a look at this surprising new ranking when Dateline 29 News continues. Announcements for you tonight. You'll see them across the bottom of your screen. The only candidate for Waynesboro's Ward B Council seat says he'll push two main issues, regionalism and economic development.
Marty White is the former director of the Stanton Chamber of Commerce. Now he serves as associate director for the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank. White says Waynesboro, Stanton, and Augusta County need to join forces and recruit new industry.
Anybody we can bring in industry-wise that moves to this area is going to bring folks, taxpayers that can help us regionally. So I think to answer that question, what we need to do is look at what's advantageous for that industry. Don't compete against it. Let's work together to get them interested in our community.
White is the first candidate to run for the Ward B seat, being vacated by Waynesboro Councilman Preston Hicks.
The Peace Corps has ranked the University of Virginia as one of the top schools in providing Corps volunteers. Last year, UVA was ranked 20th nationwide in providing alumni to volunteer overseas. This year, the university's ranking jumped to 6th in the nation. UVA's Student Volunteer Center, Madison House, generates many Peace Corps volunteers.
Commitment to service is what people are continuing through their participation in groups like the Peace Corps. And so thanks to Manus House and other groups at UVA, we really do have a fine tradition of service, and it's something to be celebrated.
The Peace Corps reports 97% of its volunteers hold at least a bachelor's degree. Virginia football coach George Welsh talked about his recruiting class for next year. John Havey tells us about his new prospects.
Plus a recap of last night's Virginia-Maryland men's basketball matchup is coming up next in sports. Last night for the Cavaliers.
Sure was. Road trip that wasn't very welcome.
Yeah, road trip, and they got beat up. They probably came home pretty sore, and now they got to turn around and hit the road for Duke on Saturday, so it gets no easier. Now, through the first 7 games of their ACC schedule, the lack of the size on the Cavaliers roster hadn't really hurt them, but last night at Cole Fieldhouse, the 25th-ranked Maryland Terrapins went to work on the Hoos inside and out. Virginia came out of the gates hanging right with the Terps, thanks in large part to Chris Williams. Williams played against bigger competition all game and more than held his own, tallying team highs in points and rebounds with 22 and 6 respectively. And outside shooting helped as well. Check out Adam Hall late in the half, spotting up from long distance. That's good for 3. That pulled UVA within 1. Adam finished with 14 on the night, but Maryland led by 5 at the half. After the break, Cavs trying to keep it close. Watch Roger Mason with the drive and the pull-up jumper over the trees. Mason tallied 10 in the ballgame, but the Terps shot a scorching 65% from the field in the second half. Here's Juan Dixon with a sweet little step-back jumper. Dixon, one of 4 Maryland players in double-figure scoring. He had 19, and 6'8", 260-pound Lonnie Baxter made the inside his own. Here's Danny Miller with the alley-oop to Baxter. He finishes quite nicely. Lonnie with a game-high 24 points, 8 rebounds, and 2 block shots as Maryland gets a big win at home, 91-79 over Virginia.
Well, we just got physically manhandled out there tonight. You know, we got beat on the boards, and we didn't have, you know, the best night. Some guys, we just have to, you know, bounce. We have to get ready and just bounce back for the next game.
Bouncing back against the Duke Blue Devils, not exactly fun. Now, UVA football coach George Welsh, he's going to turn 67 years old in late August, a few days before he begins his 28th year as a head coach. But Welsh said today he's feeling better than he did in the last 2 off seasons when he had surgeries for back problems, and he's ready to begin a top-to-bottom evaluation of the Cavaliers program. Now, one thing that's probably helping the way Welsh feels, the Hoos have gotten 22 commitments from high school players in the first 2 days of the spring signing period, including 4 Super Prep All-Americans.
Been very pleased with it. So, you know, most of these kids were early offers that we identified a long time ago, and we thought were top prospects. So I think that's, you know, if we did a good job evaluating, you know, we think we have an outstanding class.
It must be good if George talks like that. Now, in NFL news, the Saints have a head coach to replace the fired Mike Ditka. Jim Haslett, who's been the defensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers for the last 3 years, will take over a New Orleans squad that went just 3-13 last season. Haslett does have some experience in the Big Easy, working as an assistant coach for the Saints in the 95 and 96 seasons, and he was the defensive coordinator in his second year with the club. But Saints owner Tom Benson, he paid Haslett a backhanded compliment at today's introductory press conference, saying he hired, quote, the best man for the job at this time, end quote. Good luck to you, Jim. In other football news, it looks like the World Wrestling Federation wants to get into gridiron action. The WWF is forming a pro football league that plans to kick off next winter after the Super Bowl. Now, in a press conference this afternoon, WWF Chairman Vince McMahon said the NFL has become the, quote, no fun league with too many rules and breaks in the action. The new circuit is going to be called the XFL, short for the Extra Fun League. McMahon promised that the action would be 100% pure sport with faster play than the NFL, plus the XFL will use helmet cameras to spice things up. A TV contract is reportedly already in place, and 6 cities have already been selected for teams: New York, LA, San Francisco, Miami, Washington, D.C., and Orlando. Finally, the New York Yankees and shortstop Derek Jeter avoided arbitration by agreeing to a new contract, but it's not the blockbuster signing everybody's been talking about for the past few weeks. Jeter and the Yanks have been working on a record 7-year deal worth more than $118 million, but the two sides settled on a 1-year pact worth $10 million. Even so, it's the second highest salary ever for a 1-year contract, trailing only the $12 million that Yankee pitcher David Cone signed for in December. Jeter is eligible for free agency after the 2001 season. One quick note from tonight, the 24th ranked Virginia women's hoops team, they're first in the ACC with an 8-1 conference mark. They're on the road tonight to take on Georgia Tech. 7 p.m. is the tip-off. We'll have a recap tonight at 11.
All right. Thank you, John Havey. We'll be right back.
Free at Giant Food Store. If I call your name, you got 29 minutes to call and claim your prize. It's Patricia Barrett. Patricia Barrett in Charlottesville. How about $100 to spend at Giant any way you'd like? Call up right now and claim your prize. 220-2900. Patricia Barrett of Charlottesville is our winner tonight. See you tomorrow.
At 11, our following ER report.
On the danger of buying prescription drugs over the internet. It's easy to buy prescription drugs online. Tonight, following ER, we will hear calls for more regulations and enforcement. And get those sweepstakes.
Yeah, a lot of you folks have just received your sweepstakes brochure this week. Mail in those coupons. Today's just the first day of all month of drawing. So,
yeah,
a lot of fun.
NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw starts now. Thanks for watching.
See you later.
The final moments, the pilot's own voices tell a chilling story. Flight 261, upside down, out of control. But why? First votes, now money pouring in for McCain, and new evidence tonight he may give Bush another run for his money in the next big test. America's top secrets, the former head of the CIA taking secret files home. Did he put the nation's secrets at risk? And our special Lifeline series, The Science of Aging, the newest ways to beat the clock.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw. Substituting tonight, Brian Williams.
Good evening. We know a lot more tonight about what went on in that cockpit as Alaska Air Flight 261 headed down toward the Pacific Ocean. It appears now it was nothing short of heroism on the part of both men up front, trying to save an aircraft and all those on board, an aircraft that was apparently forcing itself down. We begin with NBC's Robert Hager tonight with what they're learning from the bottom of the sea.